I've actually never heard of this coffee company before, but a company called Beanbox, I don't know if you can read that, a company called Beanbox sent me this. Is this thing focusing? I don't think it is. Oh, it's not. Oh, crap. Are you kidding me? Alrighty. How's it going, everybody? I hope you're having a wonderful day. I know that I am. Today I'm going to be talking to you about this, my coffee setup, the way I make my coffee at my house, in my home, day in and day out. I've included this process a little bit in some of my vlogs and in some of my videos, but I've had several people ask me through direct messages and in the comments and that sort of thing, how do I make my coffee? Why does it look so complicated? Yeah, so today I'm going to try to uncomplicate it as much as possible. Now, this isn't going to be like an overly intricate, complicated explanation into how to make pour over coffee. This is going to be geared a little more towards the people who just want the experience of making pour over coffee in their house, and they want their coffee to taste a little better, but they don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on really expensive equipment and doing the science. And it's not really about that. It's just more about having a better cup of coffee than what a Keurig or a traditional coffee maker would give you. All right, that being said, let's get into what you're going to need. First things first, this. You're going to need a bag of coffee. Now, I highly suggest you buy whole bean coffee and grind it at your house. The reason being is because when coffee is ground up, there are gases and oils that were roasted into the coffee when it was originally made. And when you grind it up, those oils and gases, they just start to evaporate into thin air and they're gone forever, and you don't get that flavor in your coffee. Your coffee goes stale much quicker. So I highly recommend buying it whole bean and grinding it at your house. But if you don't have a grinder or you don't feel like going through that much trouble, you can grind it at the store and it should taste good enough. Not as good as it could taste, but anyways. For the sake of speediness with this video, I've already ground my coffee. It's in this here little green coffee mug. Next up, you are going to need a CHEMEX. Now this is a glass handled CHEMEX. I believe this is an 8 cup. It might be a 10 cup, I'm not sure. Either way, you need a CHEMEX. I have the glass handle, I also have a wooden handle, and I like both of them, but I like this one just a tiny bit better. You're going to need a food scale. You can pick one of these up at Bed Bath & Beyond. You can get them on Amazon, wherever. You can pick them up at your local coffee shop, that sort of thing. But yeah, food scale. You're gonna need a coffee filter. I almost forgot to mention that, but it's imperative. So the funny thing about these filters is they look just like a standard sheet of paper. It's because they pretty much are just a standard sheet of paper. But the way they work is you fold them into quarters, which they come folded in quarters. And then you just take one little corner like that and make a little cone, just like that. So 3 of the sheets are right there. One of the sheets is right there. Drop it in your CHEMEX, Bob's your uncle, you're good to go. Next up, you are going to need hot water. And you're also going to need a gooseneck kettle. Now you can, again, pick these up at a lot of your local coffee shops. You can pick them up on Amazon. You can get them at Target or at Walmart for pretty inexpensive. But yeah, gooseneck kettle. And that's pretty much all you're going to need in order to make coffee like this. Now, while I'm making this coffee, I have a couple of notes from a friend of mine who's a very talented barista here in the Northeast Louisiana area. And he gave me some notes that he thought they would be good tips for this video. So I'm going to give you those tips while I'm making the coffee. All right, first things first, go ahead and stick your filter down in the CHEMEX. You're gonna take some of your hot water, pour it in, and you're just gonna kind of wet the filter. Now, you're doing this for a couple of reasons. Number one, you are getting all the paper flavor out of your filter. And number two, it's a lot better when your coffee is going into a container that's already hot. So by pouring water through this and down into your CHEMEX, so if you give it a little slosh like that, now the base of your CHEMEX is a little warmer, and as your coffee is being made and going down to the bottom, it's not gonna set on a cold surface and start to go cold too quickly. So yeah, there's a little tip for you. All right, so now that you have this little bit of excess water in the bottom, you kind of want to get rid of it. And to save time, I brought my other CHEMEX here. You can actually, you don't even have to pull the filter out. That's a cool thing that my friend Aaron taught me. You don't have to pull the filter out. You can leave the filter in, pour it like that, and make a mess, just like I did. I really hope my wife doesn't see this video. So the first tip from Aaron is fresh boiled water. Now what he's basically saying in that is make sure that whenever you're boiling your water, you're not just like letting your water boil and then whenever it gets done, you take it off the kettle or you take it off the stove or whatever, and then you start grabbing all your stuff to make your coffee. Make sure that you're boiling your water and you're getting your stuff together while the water is coming to a boil. You want it to where when you pull the kettle off the stove, you're ready to go. You're not letting your water set for a long period of time. All right, so now that you have wet your filter, take your coffee grounds and just dump them in. Now for a Chemex this size, I recommend using about 52 grams of coffee beans. I weigh the beans before I start to grind them, and then I pour them in the grinder and grind them. Another tip to more consistent coffee would be buy a burr grinder instead of a blade grinder. So a burr grinder has these like metal wheels that go together like the wheels of a clock almost. They fit together and they roll like that. So a blade grinder is obviously a blade like a blender. With a burr grinder, you get a more consistent grind every time. All right, so the next tip from Aaron would be to create a divot in your coffee. I don't know, can you see that? Can you see that little divot? Probably not. Well, it's there. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. Just create a little divot right in the center of your coffee. This makes it to where whenever you first pour your water, it goes through the coffee down to the bottom at first and it doesn't get stopped up. It really helps create a better bloom from the get-go. We're gonna talk about blooming in just a second. All right, once you have created a divot, go ahead and start pouring your water. Now the first little bit of water that you pour, you're gonna pour just enough to get the top of the grounds wet. And then once you get to this place, I forgot a spoon. Alrighty, so I have my spoon. You also need a spoon. I forgot this, sorry. Once you've poured enough to kind of cover the grounds, you wanna take your spoon and start kind of stirring your grounds up a little bit. This is called agitating the grounds. And don't ask me why you're supposed to do it because I don't know. I just know that you're supposed to. Again, this is not a very in-depth, overly complicated way of making coffee. It can be if you really want it to be, but I try to keep it as simple as possible because, well, I just want my coffee. Alrighty. Now that you have agitated your grounds, you wanna go ahead and start pouring a little more water, and you wanna fill it probably about 1/2 inch from the top of the Chemex. Another helpful tip is make sure that you're not running the water along the sides of your filter. If you do that, all the water is gonna do is it's gonna run down the sides of your filter past the coffee and straight out of the bottom of the filter, and you're gonna get waterier, more water. There's gonna be too much water in your coffee, okay? All right, so another incredibly helpful tip from Aaron, again, is fresh ground coffee. Now I already covered that, but I can't stress it enough. It's really important that if you wanna get the best flavor out of your coffee, seriously, just do yourself a favor, go buy yourself a grinder. If you have to buy a blade grinder, that's fine because they're generally cheaper. But burr grinders are definitely, again, like I said, they're better because they're a bit more consistent, so you get a more consistent grind, so you get a more consistent flavor in your coffee every time. So once the water has started to work its way down a little bit, you have about 1/2 inch to 1 inch worth of grounds that aren't wet anymore. You wanna go ahead and start to fill it up one more time, and this time you can fill it pretty close to the top of the rim of the Chemex. So as you can see, there's a fairly consistent layer of crema. I believe that's the proper term. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong. We're getting a pretty consistent flow of coffee down below. Now, one of the last things that you're gonna wanna do is take your Chemex and give it a little bit of a slosh, just kind of like help wet the grounds, because a lot of times the grounds have a tendency to get caught around the side of the filter. So you wanna give it a little bit of a slosh, just try to help grab some of those grounds and pull them in with everything else. This is something that I never knew to do, but again, my friend Aaron told me that this is really helpful, and it's really good with getting a more consistent flavor in your coffee. Just take your Chemex and give it a little tap. Like that. And what this is doing is it's agitating the filter. It's shaking the filter, and it's making all of the grounds collect and push them immediately to the bottom. So instead of all of your grounds collecting around the rim of the filter, all of your grounds are gonna move to the middle and they're gonna drop right down into the middle of the Chemex. Now this will inevitably slow down the flow of your coffee, but it will ensure that the water has to go through the coffee before it gets down here into the basin. So as you can see, the water is starting to work its way down, and I usually give it about 60 to 90 seconds after that last pour before I eventually pull the filter out and just throw it in the trash and let what I have be what I have. Alrighty, I don't know if you can tell or not, but we've pretty much come to just a very slow drip So that's pretty much all we're gonna get out of the filter. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is take this filter, and I'm actually just gonna stick it in this CHEMEX instead. Oh. Making a mess. All right, and just like that. And there you are, that's your coffee. Now I understand this isn't enough coffee. This is probably enough to make 2 cups of coffee. And to be honest, that's about how much I drink whenever I'm making CHEMEX anyway. So if you're wanting to make coffee for a larger group of people, maybe take some time and go to your local coffee shop and consult a barista or somebody like that who might know a thing or two about coffee, about the correct ratios, how much coffee to how much water, that sort of thing. Pour it up. Ooh. That is good. That is good. So, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, comment, like, do all of those things that we all get really tired of hearing YouTubers ask us to do. But seriously, if you enjoyed this video, I usually upload more photography and cinematography based stuff around cameras and editing tips and that sort of thing. But I've had several people ask me about this, about how I make my coffee and why I do it this way. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight into why I do those things and how I do these things, and yeah, all of that other mediocrely interesting stuff. It's not that interesting, but it's kind of interesting. But anyway. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in, when will I see you guys? I'll see you guys soon. It'll be soon. It'll probably be tomorrow or next week, or I have no idea. All right, you guys have a great day. Bye. Oh, that's good.